Hello and welcome to another watercolor tutorial. In this video I'm going to show you how I painted this landscape painting, and I really hope you enjoy watching this tutorial. I'm using a piece of art, 140 pounds rough surface watercolor paper, and I'm randomly wetting the top half section of the paper using my size 12 round brush. The first color that I applied was a mixture of lavender and Imperial Purple, which is a purple by Daniel Smith. And the next color is Phthalo Blue. You can also use cerulean blue as well. I'm also softening some of the edges using a clean damp brush, but I made sure that I took the excess water off my brush so that I don't create a cauliflower or background where I don't want it. These white dry patches that are left without paint in the sky are the result of wetting the paper randomly, so leaving some dry patches in between so that we can have a combination of soft edges and hard edges. Now it's time to paint the grasses. So the color that I use for the grasses is a mixture of yellow. It's a primary yellow, so it's not warm or cool yellow, and I mix that with phthalo blue. And also I'm varying the mixture as well. So at the center part of the grasses, at the top part, I have more yellow in the mixture, and at the bottom part I added more blue to darken it a little bit. And while the paper is still wet, I'm painting one of the mountains using the same mixture, but this time more phthalo blue in the mixture, so it's a little bit darker and it pushes that color further back in the distance when it's cooler color and it has more blue in it. And before I let the paper dry, I splattered some clean water on the paper to create those blooms, and also I added some green to my brush and splattered that color as well to the foreground. And then I let the paper dry completely. I need to mention that my board is at an angle, so the colors would naturally run down the paper. That makes the colors stay slightly wet longer at the bottom part of a shape. For example, when I was painting the mountain and I softened the bottom edges using a clean damp brush after painting it, the bottom part was slightly wet. So it's very important to have your board and your paper at an angle so that you can do this technique of softening much easier. I used a watered down version of phthalo blue to paint the river, and while the paint was still damp, I added some of the darker green color that I mixed for the mountain on the right hand side. I added that to read as the reflection of some of the grasses that are in the water. I also decided to darken the mountain on the right hand side a little bit more, so I used the same color but watered down enough to basically glaze over that color and make it slightly darker. I painted the mountain in the center using a mixture of lavender and a touch of Imperial Purple, and the mountain on the left hand side, lavender, more Imperial Purple, and more and some phthalo blue in it to darken it and bring it forward a little bit. The color that I use for the house is a mixture of burnt sienna and raw sienna, but I ended up really not liking this color and I used my acrylic paint to paint over it. So if you're painting along, please wait and don't paint the house yet. I'm using my small Chinese calligraphy brush, and I'm using a watered down version of burnt sienna to basically darken the edges of the river, and also a few touches of orange added to burnt sienna to make the color a little bit more vibrant. The color that I'm using to paint the side and the front of the house is a very dark grayed down brown, so I added a touch of indigo to darken it and make it less brownish, less reddish brownish. But you can also add a touch of Payne's gray or even purple as well. I think I painted the side and the front side of the house a little bit too dark, and while the paint is still wet, I'm dabbing it with a paper towel to make it a little bit lighter. If you find that your paint is already dried, you can wait for it to dry completely, and then you can come back and massage the paint using a clean damp brush, and that way you can activate the paint, and then you can dab it with a paper towel to lift some of the paint. I'm painting the mountain on the left hand side using the same mixture of phthalo blue and yellow, but this time a lot more phthalo blue in the mixture, and I added a touch of purple to grade down the green a little bit more. I painted all the mountains except for the green one on the right hand side, wet on dry. And now it's time to paint the flowers. So I'm using my acrylic paint and my Chinese calligraphy brush, and I'm just randomly making some loose marks to read as flowers. So I noticed that the more you try to be careful and try to paint the flowers exactly, the more rigid the painting can look, and the more free and random your brush strokes are, the better it looks, especially with these kind of loose and atmospheric style of painting. So don't worry about painting the exact shape of the flowers. This is not a realistic painting. Just as long as the shape is random and kind of similar to shapes of flowers would read as well. So I'm trying to vary the distance between these flowers, slightly change the shape of them so they don't all look the same, and also smaller, very smaller marks for the ones that are further away in the distance, and they get more grouped as they go farther back. So just try to a tiny dot would read as flower when they are really far back in the distance. I think I really like using acrylic paint for painting the flowers. You can also use masking fluid in the beginning of the painting before you paint anything, and then remove the masking fluid and reveal the white of the paper, so that your painting is pure watercolor. But I find that painting on top of it using a opaque medium like gouache or acrylic or acrylic ink can look a lot more natural compared to using masking fluid that can create really hard edges. So I really prefer this method. And I also added a touch of purple to the white acrylic paint to have some purple flowers, and I'm also going to be adding some pink to the white to have some pinkish flowers as well. I really recommend you have at least one opaque paint when you are especially learning how to paint with watercolors, because there are some techniques that you can paint around a subject so that you don't have to worry about using a masking fluid or any opaque medium, but those techniques are very advanced and sometimes impossible for some specific scenes. For example, if there's like too many flowers, or it really depends on the subjects that you're painting. But I really recommend you have a opaque paint because you can correct your mistakes, you can paint on top of your watercolors, and also it just makes the whole painting with watercolor a lot more convenient. I also wanted to mention that I recommend you use matte finish acrylic paint if you're using acrylic paint, If you're using gouache is already matte, so you don't have to worry about it. But for acrylic paint, I really recommend it to be matte, because glossy finish ones don't really go well with watercolors. If you use them on top of a watercolor painting, they can look out of place. And don't forget that you can add your watercolors to your acrylic paint, to your white acrylic paint or white gouache, and that way you can mix different colors, and just having one white opaque medium can be very useful with watercolor painting. And as you can see here, I'm mixing my mistakes, but I think I actually made it a little bit worse. I need to keep reminding myself not to overwork my paintings, but at first I thought the side and front side of the house was a little bit too wide. I tried to fix that, but I think I painted, I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking this, but anyways, I just wanted to let you know you can correct mistakes, paint on top of things, and it's just a very useful thing to have. Also, to add some details for the flowers, I mixed a dirty orangish color using raw sienna and burnt sienna, and I paint that just a dot of color at the it doesn't have to be exact center of the flowers, it can be anywhere inside the flowers. And I also added a touch of purple to the same mixture of raw sienna and burnt sienna to paint the darker details of the purple and pink flowers. I decided to add a few touches of line work for the house, but I really didn't like the look of it, so I'm now using a mixture of a touch of pink to acrylic paint to basically cover up and paint on top of the roof of the house. I'm also here using a watered down version of acrylic paint this time. So far I've been using super thick paint because I wanted it to be opaque enough for the flowers to sit on top of the grasses. But this time, because I wanted to create a foggy and misty effect on top of the mountain on the left hand side, I added a little bit of water to white acrylic paint to make it a little bit more look more natural for the fog effect. I am also adding a few touches of green for the grasses. I'm making sure not to overdo this technique, but just to add a few details for the grasses near the foreground. So I'm not adding any of these lines for the ones that are farther back, because we naturally can't see details when they are really far away from us. The color is a mixture of yellow and phthalo blue, and is watered down enough so that it sits well on top of the grasses and it doesn't have too much contrast for the ground. And I'm also varying the marks that I'm making for the details on the grasses. Not all of them have to be vertical lines. They can also be like some random shaped lines to read as details for the grasses. And this is the finished piece. I really hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial. Don't forget to ask me any questions in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy painting!